Ladies and gentlemen, Psalms 11 says, "In the Lord I put my trust. How can you say to my soul, flee as a bird to your mountain? Lo, the wicked bends their bow, they make ready their arrow upon the string, and they seek to shoot at the upright in heart. If the foundations be destroyed, how can the righteous do good? The Lord is in his holy temple, and the Lord's throne is in heaven. His eyes behold, his eyelids try the children of men. The Lord tried the righteous, but the wicked, and he that loves violence, his soul hates. Upon the wicked he shall rain sneers, fire, and brimstone, a horrible tempest. This shall be the portion of their cup. For the righteous Lord loves righteousness, and his countenance will behold the upright." In another piece of scripture it says, "To do justice and judgment." See, justice, like the Justice League, always pays out in the end. The scales are always balanced. If you seek to do the right thing, if you seek righteousness, and you seek justice, then you will never be moved. Now, let's look at Wonder Woman. I'm going to predict some of her box office for the coming weekend, but we do know that her domestic total as of July 12th, Wednesday, 2017, this week was $372,552,849. A worldwide box office kume of $749,652,849. Scott Mendelson in his article in Forbes speaks about Wonder Woman's legginess, but what I want to speak about here is actually how she's doing in the all-time domestic box office, as well as how she's performing worldwide, and my projections for that. When we look at the all-time domestic box office at present, as of Wednesday, she was the 33rd highest grossing domestic just all-time domestic movie. It had outgrossed The Passion of the Christ, Secret Life Pets, and Despicable Me 2, as well as The Jungle Book. Well, my projection is that Wonder Woman is going to make $4 to $5 million over the weekend. Of course, this is Wednesday. We haven't got Thursday's tally, which would probably carry it again another $1 million. So we will look at the domestic total currently as it stands, probably at $373 million. Now, if it grosses in $4 to $5 million over the weekend, that means it will put its total somewhere between 377 million and 378 million. That means that Wonder Woman will move up to the 31st spot ahead of Lord of the Rings. So she will move from the 33rd highest domestic grossing film of all time to the 31st highest domestic grossing film of all time. And these are films we're talking about. It'll be ahead of Spider-Man 2 and ahead of Lord of the Rings, which will be an impressive accomplishment. Now, in terms of all-time worldwide box office, if we factor in that it's about $4 to $5 million it makes domestically, and then internationally you have to add in the international total it grossed this week, as well as the international totals it'll gross over the weekend. And since it made somewhere from 5 to 6 million this week, usually you just multiply everything by 2. So if it makes 6 million this week, it's about 12 million there. And then if it made 4 million to 5 million over the weekend, we're looking at somewhere between 8 and 10 million. Okay, so let's just go with the upper limit, and we say 10 million. So we're looking at a total in all of about 22 million you have to add to that total. So as you can see, this movie is currently at the position of number 78th in the world, 749.7 million. It has crossed 750 million, I'm sure, on Thursday. So when you group together 22 million to 750 million, you're looking at something like 772 million, which would put it just below Guardians of the Galaxy. So it would move from the 78th position to the 72nd position, just ahead of 2012, coming out of the weekend. So you're looking at something like that. It could even get as close, maybe even as Guardians of the Galaxy. I don't know if it'll overtake it, but it will move from the 78th position to the 72nd position by the end of this weekend, factoring in its international gross over the week as well as its gross during the weekend. Okay, so that's remarkable, and those are the two predictions I have for Wonder Woman. Of all its achievements, and has made so many different achievements, it is the #1 DCEU movie grossing. That's domestically. Internationally, it is the second. It's also the second highest grossing superhero summer movie currently. It's just behind Guardians of the Galaxy. It's also the third DC Comics highest grossing domestic film, behind The Dark Knight and The Dark Knight Rises. And also it is accomplished that it is the second highest grossing superhero origin film. It's the 10th highest grossing superhero film and comic book adaptation, and it is the 5th highest grossing action heroine film. So this film has accomplished a ton of things, and it's not finished yet at the box office. Now, some people project that it will finish its run somewhere at $390 million, which I can easily see that being so. But what really is interesting to me is to see if it can get anywhere. It's now north of $750 million. So can it get to $800 million worldwide Kume? And in terms of its domestic Kume, can it get past $400 million? That is the $100 million question, which I would love to find out, and I guess it won't be long before we find that out. It's ahead of the curve in terms of projections that other people had for it. Its run is slowing down, but it's doing pretty well. We'll see if it can either cap off at $390 million. When we look at its foreign box office, which we can tell us something about it, we find out that the foreign box office so far is still not optimized. China is $89 million. Man of Steel was 60-something million, but I think Batman v Superman was $100-something million. And if this movie can outperform Batman v Superman in the Chinese box office, I think it still has a couple million left, at least 11 million left to get from China. And when you pretty much add up from every single country, it hasn't optimized and reached its full potential yet. So it still has some monies to collect from there, maybe somewhere between $30 and $40 million still to go. So in its international Kume, it could very well make it to $800 million based on that information alone. In terms of domestic Kume, as you can see, if you look at its daily graphing, this is what we see. So most recently, this week, it's still grossing in over $1 million every single day. Now, I don't know if that will continue, but it means, therefore, for this week alone, it's grossed over $400 million already. Okay? So, if it's grossed over $400 million for this week, that means that we're looking at, in a week in total, it grosses in about it grosses over $4 or $5 million over the weekend. Then it can really spike up. So it's doing pretty well, and this is going to be its 7th weekend, I do believe. And if it grosses over $1 million for 7 weekends, that's pretty good. If it can do it for 8 weekends, that's even better. Suicide Squad, I think, did it for, I think it was 10 weekends, something like that. Suicide Squad did very, very well. And you have to understand, this movie has outgrossed Suicide Squad. So if you look at the legs of the DCEU movie so far, they've been doing relatively well. The least leggy was Batman v Superman. Had a top-heavy opening, but then Civil War was basically about the same thing. So I don't know why people make a big deal about it. You make a tremendous set of money to start with, you're not going to maintain and sustain that. But nonetheless, Wonder Woman is doing exceptionally well, and that can only order well for Justice League. That can't hurt Justice League. People want Justice League to be universally received. People are talking about the future of the DCU movies resting on Justice League's shoulders. I don't see any of that being the case. Justice League just needs to be Justice League. There are other DCEU movies that are coming after with different directors. Justice League is going to be probably the last DCEU Zack Snyder film. So after that, it's just going to be other directors taking over the DCEU. So far, I've enjoyed the DCEU. I still haven't gone and seen Wonder Woman in theaters a second time. And that says volumes about how I think about the movie. It's not that it's a bad movie. It's a pretty good movie. But it's a little bit better than Suicide Squad. But I still don't think that it's a better movie than Man of Steel or Batman v Superman. With Man of Steel, I think it's just barely better. I think it's just barely less than as good as Man of Steel. And with Batman v Superman, I think Batman v Superman is simply an all-time classic. And it's just what it is. So in terms of movies, I think that I still have Batman v Superman and Man of Steel better than Wonder Woman. Man of Steel barely better than Wonder Woman. I've been watching the two movies for a while, so I've been able to figure out, okay, well, Man of Steel, the thing with Man of Steel, why I watched Man of Steel 6 times, I probably wouldn't have watched it so much, was that, one, I didn't know what to expect when I was going in to see Man of Steel, and two, the novelty of this new kind of way of doing movies, so kind of hyper realistic and with explanations for how Superman was able to have his powers and all of that stuff. Very detailed stuff that Zack Snyder went into. I think that's what made me love Man of Steel so much. Whereas I really exploited everything I could see about Wonder Woman. And Wonder Woman was kind of a story very similar to Man of Steel's story. So I think that's what, and then I just spoiled myself rotten watching everything that had to do with Wonder Woman. I probably should have just backed off, kind of like what happened with me and Man of Steel. I should have just backed off. But because I was so entrenched in the DCEU and looking at everything that has to do with it, same thing I did with Suicide Squad, by the way. Entrenched with everything, that when you spoil yourself rotten, going into the movie is not the same as if you would just watch the movie with fresh eyes, you know. So I have to stay away from, you know, spoilers and clips and too much into the Justice League, and just go and watch the Justice League with fresh pair of eyes instead of spoiling the daylights out of, spoiling myself stupid with the Justice League. So anyway, I just wanted to share this video with you guys. I hope you enjoyed it. Of course, justice is the way to go. That's why people love the word justice. It seems to say fair play and fair judgment, and that's what Psalms 11 was all about. You guys have a great day.